Welcome back to Rin Behind the Practice and to the next Patterns episode. If you're new here, these episodes are a little different. They're not interviews, they're reflections. They're me stepping back and looking at the bigger picture of the conversations I've been having and pulling out the patterns that are emerging the strongest. If we haven't met yet, I'm Sophie Campisi. I'm a holistic business strategist, and I work with practitioners, coaches, and healers who are incredibly skilled at what they do, but are struggling to get the business side of things to actually work. My work is really focused on bridging that gap between being brilliant in your craft and being able to build a business around it that is clear, sustainable, and actually reaches the people you're meant to help. I help holistic practitioners, coaches, and healers build meaningful, aligned, successful, so that their businesses not only support them financially, but they do so in a way that feels deeply aligned with their work, their values, and the reason they got into this in the first place. I'm not a general business coach. I don't give people thoughts and ideas for different tactics they can use. I'm a strategist. I guide people with a step-by-step proven process from point A to point B to navigate the vital startup phase of their businesses so that they can nail their OMM sweet spot and really set themselves and their businesses up to thrive long-term. One of the things that I started noticing over the past few years is that some of the most honest, important conversations about building a practice were happening quietly, one-on-one, behind the scenes, in isolation. And there's still so much guilt and shame and confusion when the business side of things isn't working the way people thought or hoped that it would. Even when the work that they're doing with their clients is deep, even when the work they're doing with their clients is brilliant. So the goal of this podcast is to bring those conversations out into the open, to normalize them, to make them more visible, and to hopefully soften some of that internal pressure that so many practitioners are carrying. Because one of the most important things I want people to understand, and something that comes up in almost every conversation I have, is this: the state of your business is not a reflection of how good you are at the work that you do. Those two things are completely different skill sets. Most practitioners have spent years, sometimes decades, developing their craft, but almost no one was trained in how to build a business, and especially not how to build a startup. So we end up in this position where we're incredibly capable in one domain and complete beginners in another. And instead of us being reminded about that and that being acknowledged, we tend to internalize it. We think something is wrong with us. We think we're missing something. We think we should be able to figure it out. But if you've never been taught something, why would you expect yourself to just know how to do it? Just because we weren't taught how to do it before, it doesn't mean that we don't have the responsibility to figure it out now. Not knowing is okay, but staying in a place of guessing, feeling like you're constantly wearing a blindfold, trying everything, throwing tactics at the wall, hoping something works, that's not sustainable. We can't fake it until we make it in this work, because it won't work. And the reality is, right now, people need what you do more than ever. And your business is the vehicle that allows that work to actually reach them. So at a certain point, it becomes our responsibility to stop guessing and start building this properly, to get the support, to get the clarity, to learn what we were never taught about the startup building process. Because if the business doesn't work, the work doesn't reach people. And that's really what I've been paying attention to across these recent conversations. Different practitioners, different modalities, different stages of business. But underneath all of that, there are distinct patterns that are blind spots for us industry-wide, patterns that have people getting stuck, patterns in what works and what does not work, patterns where in general we are lacking the necessary distinctions to have breakthroughs around the things that are holding us back. So today I'm going to walk through a few of the patterns that have been coming up, specifically from my conversations with Tara, Georgia, Cindi, Elizabeth, Caren, and Kristal. And I'm not pulling these things out as hard and fast rules, but I do want to shine light from my expert lens from what's actually happening in the field. So let's dive into the first pattern, calling out and shining light on the cringiness that's in the coaching industry, the shadow side of the coaching industry. This came up in my conversations with both Tara and Georgia. Something feels off in the business coaching space right now. People have been burned. There has been a lot of overpromising and under-delivering. There's been a lot of performative marketing. The problem with all of these things is that in the end, it's causing a lot more harm than actually good. It's not actually delivering results. I have no problem with someone charging a high ticket price for a program if it's going to deliver. But the pattern I'm seeing over and over again, and the conversations that I'm having with people over and over again, is that they are investing big amounts of money, 4 figures, 5 figures, into these coaching programs where people are promising breakthroughs in business success, and they're ending with no results. And often they're actually feeling even more confused than they started. So not only are they confused, so now they've invested huge amounts of money, huge amounts of time, huge amounts of energy, usually reworked so much of their work and so much of their business. And then at the end, it's not working. It's not delivering results. Their business isn't sustainable. So now they are more broke than they were before, usually by thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And like I said, even more confused. Now their confidence has taken a hit. They might be even more off track than they were when they started. And then there's another layer of, I must be doing something wrong. Now, most of the people that I talk to have been able to see the clarity of, no, it's not me, because I started talking to other people in the program and they had the same experience. So I'm so grateful for those people who are speaking up and who are finding other people so that they can ground in the experience and ground in the reality and see, wait a second, I don't think it actually was just me, but it hasn't worked for anyone. But this is a major, major, major problem. And again, I have no problem supporting something that is high dollar if it works. The problem is that it's not working. I have been this person before. I invested tens of thousands of dollars into my practice in the early years of building. And this is actually the reason that I'm now doing what I do. Because every time someone told me, if you do this, it's going to work, it didn't work. And then I was left thinking like, gosh, like, what am I missing? So if you know me, I have a business master's, I have a law degree, I'm very business savvy, I'm very tech savvy. My background's in sports, I'm a doer, I'm a finisher. So every time I hired someone, I did every single thing they told me to do, and I did it super, super well, and it never worked. And I think because of my background, it put me in a position where, yes, I absolutely took a hit to my confidence. I was so confused. I was so lost. But I didn't fully internalize it thinking, oh, it just must be me. I really was genuinely thinking, what am I not being told? What am I missing? I know this work is aligned for me. There has to be someone out there that has the information that I feel like I'm missing. I constantly felt like I was wearing a blindfold trying to build my practice. I'm happy to make big decisions. I'm happy to put the work in. I'm happy to even take risks and invest in myself and in my business. But what I kept running into is I felt like I was wearing a blindfold. I did not know if the decisions I was making were actually the right ones to make. That's what always guided me to hiring these people that said, oh, I can help you find success in your practice. And I would do it. And again, I would do all the things and I would be left worse off than when I started. So that is a very early start to how I ended up doing what I do now, because I went searching for myself at the time. I was like, there has to be something else out there. This cannot be. I've been burned so many times, but I still trust in my alignment. I trust myself, and my gut is telling me this is an alignment. And I think there's something more out there that I'm not being told. I did ultimately find it, the missing pieces to the puzzle that no one was telling me. And it's why I'm doing what I do now. But the point of this pattern is that there's a lot of broken trust right now for us when it comes to business coaching, when it comes to business coaching, business strategy, business courses, finding business success. And first and foremost, I just want to say, I'm sorry if you've gone through this. I'm sorry if it caused you harm. I'm sorry if it caused confusion. I'm sorry if your confidence took a hit. I'm just so sorry that this has been the reality. And I also want to acknowledge there is a lot of trust to be rebuilt. One of the realities for me in having these conversations is me having to come to terms with the fact that now, since I do support people on the business side, there's a lot of trust that needs to be rebuilt. Things are fragile. Trust is fragile, but I'm acknowledging it. I'm willing to take that on because I know that there are solutions and I believe in each one of you. And I know that the work that you have devoted your life and your path and your mission to is vital. It's important and people need you. If this conversation topic interests you, go back to Tara Diana and Georgia Thelen's episodes. They're linked below and we dive into it a lot more. Shifting now into pattern number 2, which is business beginnership. This came up in a really clear way in my conversation with Cindi Frechette, and she had an amazing analogy. Core concept is competency is domain specific. So the skills and the expertise that you have with your modalities and the work that you do with your clients is completely separate from skills for startup building and business building. So not only do they not transfer over, but they also don't directly reflect on each other. So you can be brilliant at the work that you do and be in complete beginnership with business building and navigating a startup and navigating the startup process of a startup business. And if you are in beginnership with startup businesses and your business side is struggling, it has zero reflection on how brilliant and skilled you are at the work that you do. Cindi used the analogy of engineering. If you haven't yet listened to her episode, Cindi is a therapist who is shifting into entrepreneurship and solopreneurship, building a coaching practice. And one of the things that she does to help her navigate the ups and downs of the business building side is to remind herself that she's never been trained as an engineer. She doesn't know anything about engineering. And if she got an engineering job tomorrow, of course she would be completely lost. Why would she expect herself to be able to execute and pull off the tasks? She doesn't know anything about it. So she uses that to remind herself she's never built a business before. She's never done a startup before. Why would she expect herself to be able to execute it? Why would I expect myself to excel at something that I've never learned? This is so brilliant because it is so important for us to keep in mind as a fundamental foundational piece to actually being able to succeed in the future. We cannot skip beginnership. We cannot skip learning something and gaining competency in skill. So often we put ourselves in new situations and expect competency immediately. So if you are a holistic practitioner, a coach, a healer, you're so talented at what you do, you answered the call to be of service, and inherent in that decision, you actually started a business and you actually started on the journey of startup entrepreneurship. If you fall into that camp and you have never studied the startup entrepreneurship and business building process, just like you get an engineering job overnight, why would you expect yourself to excel at something that you have never learned and you have never studied? So first and foremost is to acknowledge this, take the pressure off of ourselves to excel at something that we haven't trained in, we haven't studied, we haven't had time to practice. So that's the first thing. And with that, it is our responsibility to do what we need to gain the competency. So we couldn't have known. So we can't beat ourselves up at not knowing something that we've never studied or we've never been taught. And it is our responsibility to take the action that we need to gain the skill, to gain the competency so that we can thrive in our business. So we can't skip beginnership, but we can get the guidance, the support, and the structure that we need to be able to navigate through it with a lot more grace and ease, saving ourselves a lot of wasted time, money, resources, and energy. And I want to add something that's really important here. Under the bigger umbrella of business, there are so many different types of businesses and business skills. Most of us in the holistic world actually are building startup businesses. So you have businesses that are in the growth phase. You have businesses that are in the maturity phase. You have corporate businesses. You have small business ownership. You also have this whole special area of startup entrepreneurship and startup businesses. Something that is very unique about a startup business is that a startup business doesn't yet have product market fit. It's what I call offer market match. What most people aren't talking about is that the significant majority of us in the holistic world, if you're a holistic practitioner, coach, and healer, you have lots of different certifications, you have lots of different modalities. What you do is very unique and special to you. You don't fit into a clear box or a clear title. You fit into the startup entrepreneurship category of business building. Now, there is no right or wrong about which one you fall into, but let's use this metaphor. If you are going to play a soccer game and you show up with tennis gear or golf gear, it's not going to help you. You can't complete the objective of playing soccer. So if and when we don't understand which playing field we're on and we're using equipment or skills or tactics from a different playing field, it's not going to work. The same way, so if and when you fall into startup entrepreneurship, which most of us in our industry do, and you're using business skills from other pockets of the bigger business world, it simply won't work. It's not that it's wrong, it's not that it's bad, it just won't work. What's really vital to acknowledge here is that startup entrepreneurship has this really unique startup search phase that cannot be skipped before growth and maturity can happen. So if you are in startup entrepreneurship, you can't skip that phase. Most of us are floundering here, and that's why we're not seeing growth and success. But what you can do is get support to help you navigate through that with a lot more grace and ease so that you can decrease the amount of wasted time, money, resources, and energy, and you can get to the growth phase much quicker. Over 90% of us fall into this category. So if you are someone that has struggled to see growth, especially if you've been doing this for a while, this is likely at the core of why things aren't working for you. And nothing's wrong, you didn't do anything wrong, but you will need different types of support to navigate through that startup, to navigate through that early phase of startup entrepreneurship. So again, go back to Cindy's episode if you want to hear more about the metaphor that she used to help her navigate this mindset shift. We talk about it a lot more. Now let's shift into pattern 3. This is stability and financial stability during the startup phase. This came up so beautifully in my conversation with Caren. Huge shout out to Caren. Thank you so much for being open and authentic and vulnerable about talking about this and having this conversation, because it is one of the most overlooked things for people who are starting their business. Keeping your job or getting one, whether it's full-time or part-time, can be one of the most valuable strategic decisions that you make for long-term sustainability and long-term success in your own business. Why is that? Well, things just take time. If you're starting your own business, it will take time. There's only so much. I like to think of time as having 2 components. We have that linear time and space time that we have on Earth, and then we have time as it relates to action. So if we have 100 steps to complete a task, we do have some control over how fast we're able to execute each task. Both are at play all of the time. So even if you are the hardest worker, even if you're someone that gets things done and you're going to take a lot of action and you're going to go, there's only so much control you have over the fact that some things just genuinely take time. And one of the best things that you can do for yourself in your startup entrepreneurship journey is give yourself the time to let things naturally unfold the way that they need to. So think of gardening. Things take time. You can't completely rush the gardening process. Yes, you can tend to a garden. You can take your consistent action day after day. That's going to help you have a lush and thriving garden, but you can't rush it. You can't rush something from seed to fruit. There is a linear time piece that has to play out. The same goes with our businesses. There are actions that we can take to lay the foundation for our businesses to thrive long term, but we cannot rush things overnight. Things do take time, but we cannot rush things overnight. And if we have no way of making money, that financial pressure and strain can really affect the long-term outcome of what we're building. Simply speaking, one of the biggest ways is that financial pressure distorts our decision-making. So if we don't have space to let things breathe, it will absolutely affect the decisions that we make. It can also increase the amount of stress, harmful stress, that our business building brings us, especially if you have kids, especially if you have other responsibilities. This can really wreak havoc. So when I was building my business, before I had kids, before I had a partner, before I had other responsibilities beside myself, I had a way higher tolerance for brokenness. I had a way higher tolerance for financial strain. But business building takes time. My life shifted. My life transformed during the time that I was building my business. And I wasn't always a single 20-something in business building. So then my tolerance for financial strain changed dramatically. So it's really important to be aware of your tolerance for financial strain, not because it's bad or good or right or wrong, but simply because it's going to impact the decisions that you make. And there's a really good chance that you aren't going to set yourself up for long-term success and for long-term sustainability. So really key here is remembering to look big picture, remembering to look at your North Star, where you want to be. And I want to say, just because you get a job or you have a job that is not your full passion, that is your business and the practice that you are building, you are not selling yourself short. You are actually setting yourself up to succeed in your entrepreneurship journey. You are actually setting yourself up for more long-term success and sustainability. So please don't think you're selling yourself short. If you know the reason why you're keeping your job or getting a second job, hopefully that can help you increase some of that dignity that you might feel that you're losing. Because I really want to tell you, this is actually a very smart and strategic decision that you're making. The advice that I would give someone is do not dive and fully commit until you have product market fit, offer market match, or you are very close to getting it. You can see the natural evolution of it coming, because there really is not a one size fits all for knowing when that's going to come. Each market, each pocket of people takes a different amount of time to engage and nurture and warm up. So hang on to that job, get a part-time job, give yourself some breathing room so that you can genuinely nurture the process really authentically in connection and not force anything. Scarcity can create urgency, which can lead to poor decision-making, but stability can create that fertile ground to make better decisions, to have clearer thinking, and to lay that stronger foundation for long-term success. And the last thing that I want to call out here is that pressure does not necessarily create clarity. I know there are a lot of people that say go all in and then you have no other choice but to make it happen. That's not actually fully true. There is a certain point where you can put a stake in the ground. But if you aren't acknowledging the startup process and the steps that it actually does take, you can't bypass that. Again, go back to that garden metaphor. You plant your seeds, you have your soil, you have your water. That's like saying, if I sit out here and stare at this garden all day long, the fruit's going to come up quicker. It's not true. There's still a certain amount of time that it's going to take. So if you want to stay outside and stay right by that garden bed until things start fruiting, it's not actually going to contribute to the process. Yes, there are certain actions that you can take, but at a certain point, it kind of caps out. Then you need to let it breathe a little bit. The same goes with the business. So again, pressure does not necessarily create clarity. It actually can usually distort it and add stress to the whole system and can actually affect our well. Again, Caren, thank you so much for bringing this up, for sharing so authentically about your life transition, about getting back into your full-time work. I want to acknowledge and also repeat to you, you are not selling yourself short. What you did is and was courageous, and in my opinion, the wise thing to do. All right, shifting into pattern number 4, the social media growth myth. This came up in my conversation with Kristal, and it was so huge. This is everywhere. The simple idea here is that more posting equals more clients, more content equals more clients, more consistency online equals more clients, more consistency in videos equals more clients. It is not. So some questions to explore here are, at what point do we evaluate if it's working? And what are we actually trying to achieve? So again, I hear this a lot. People think if I'm more consistent with social media, I'm going to get more clients. Based on everything that I have studied, based on everything that I teach people, it's actually not true. It's not to say that social media has no part, but it's to bust this myth that more content, more engagement online equals more clients. What's missing, the biggest piece that's missing to all of this, is that you have to understand the strategy for startup building, is that you have to understand the strategy and the necessary steps for navigating the search phase of startup entrepreneurship. This is what brings the strategy into understanding why you're doing the things that you're doing and what you're putting your energy and your time and your resources into. So again, most people default to more content, more visibility tactics, thinking that if they have more visibility, their business or their practice will be more successful. When really, they need to be checking those fundamentals, checking those business fundamentals. If you don't have the fundamentals that you need for navigating the startup phase, you can never get to that growth point. Checking the alignment and the strategy, checking the demand. If you don't understand how to assess demand and then find it and meet it where it is, the gap is simply way too far to bridge. There are millions and millions and millions and probably billions of posts online every single day. You don't need millions or billions of people to see your stuff. Not only that, if you're just relying on social media and putting things out there, it's kind of like saying you're going to put a flyer or a sign out front of your house and hope that your clients walk by and see it. Again, I'm not saying that social media doesn't have a place. It absolutely does if you are trying to build a mostly online, mostly virtual business. But you need to have a really clear understanding of how to find where your people are online, the same way that you would do so in person. So if you put a sign or a flyer out front of your house and hope some people walk by, that might not be a very solid strategy unless you know that your people are walking by. I'm going to put a sign there. I'm going to put a flyer there. And I know that 500 people who are my target market a day are going to see this. So we need to be more strategic about our approach to engaging online and with social media. Spending time and resources and energy on putting content out on social media without a strategy or without clarity or without a clear strategy likely will never give you the return that you think it might. Again, this came up in my conversation with Kristal. I'm so glad that it did. It's one of the most common myths that I hear from people about what they think is going to help them grow their businesses. If you want to hear us talk more about it, go to Kristal's episode. It's linked below the show notes. And before we wrap up today, all of these patterns point to the same thing. It's not a marketing problem and it's not a discipline problem. It's a structure and clarity and strategy and foundations problem. Practitioners I'm speaking with are not struggling because their work lacks value. The struggle is coming from the fact that the bridge between their gifts and the people who need them is still shaky. And that bridge is the business. It's the clarity, it's the structure, it's understanding how to actually build something that allows your work to reach beyond you. It's understanding how to actually navigate the vital startup search phase of your business before you can get to growth. And this is so important because when these businesses and these practices work, something really meaningful happens. People get support, communities get stronger, cycles begin to shift. And when they don't, the cost is much bigger than a business not succeeding. It's people not finding the help that they need. So if you are somewhere in this process, if you are brilliant at what you do, but the business side hasn't fully clicked yet, you're not alone and you're not wrong. You're just being asked to learn a completely different skill set, one that most of us were never taught. And the more we can bring these conversations into the open, the more we can start building this differently, more clearly, more strategically, and in a way that actually supports the work that we do. Thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next episode of Ren Behind the Practice.